Today we are talking about the Bastet rework, which in my opinion is absolutely fantastic, by the way. Spoilers ahead. The Bastet rework is a much bigger rework than what we see with Odin, in my opinion, because the interactions are changed in very different ways and really overhauling basically her entire kit while not touching all the abilities, but the way that everything interacts. So it's very, very interesting, and with that, let's jump into it. Developer update Bastet. SMITE Season 7 reveals continue on with another god ability update preview. Bastet, the Egyptian goddess of cats, has had overwhelming community support, and now it's time to give her the love she deserves. In 7.1, Bastet will wield an entirely new ultimate that utilizes her cats in an all-new way. This combines with overhauling her ability 3 to summon a single cat and provide more utility for Bastet on a lower cooldown. Yes, you heard that right, her 3 now spawns a cat. This might feel really redundant if you've read the recent Odin Freya post, so it never hurts to restate our methodology and goals. We're gonna skip over this a little bit or briefly summarize it because I've really read it often enough. So the most important points when it comes to rework are popularity, balance problems, community discussion, and clear ways for the kit to improve. And once those things are identified, then they will try to keep the most important parts of the kit that make the identity of the kit in it, and just rework the parts that are kind of not as interesting. Keep the core gameplay, don't remove unique features, and have specific goals for what they want to achieve with the rework. Does Bastet meet the criteria? Popularity. Bastet has been pretty consistent in her mid to low popularity, as can be seen in her full history chart later in the blog. 55th most popular goddess in Arena, Clash, Joust, and Siege. 74th most popular goddess in Conquest. 69th, nice, most popular goddess in Ranked Conquest. Bastet isn't dead last, but she's not exactly popular either. She also has been at nearly the same popularity since 2015. This signals pretty clearly that the player base needs something more exciting to be changed before we see any significant shifts in her metrics. Even some high-profile SPL performances haven't caused much movement. Very true, she's just always this kind of like, well, backup split push guard most of the time, so even for that she's not used as much anymore with the changes to backdoor, and we only very rarely see her being used effectively outside of that, at least on high levels of play and competitive levels of play. And outside of that, she's also more of a niche god that some players really like. Balance problems. Just like Odin, Bastet's balance problems is a perception versus reality issue. Currently, in the Heimdall update, her win rates are 17th most winning goddess in Arena, Clash, Joust, and Siege, 22nd most winning goddess in Conquest, and 31st most winning goddess in Ranked Conquest. Now, I will say with this that she also has a relatively low player base, at least in Ranked Conquest, as far as I'm aware, as far as I recall the most recent stats. And it's kind of hard to look at the stats across 4 different casual modes at once with a goddess like Bastet, that I'm pretty sure will have different outcomes between, say, Siege and Arena. Without looking into the stats too deep here, I think it's not quite as simple as saying, hey, she's just got a high win rate everywhere, but rather she does look good when you look at the whole picture, because Ranked Conquest here also includes all levels of play and Ranked Conquest, which of course can again shift things a little bit in one direction or the other. A god could have a relatively high win rate in every rank up to Plat maybe, and then fall off, for example. But yeah, numbers for Bastet here are quite solid. She's not amazing, but she's certainly not weak either. What is strange is that even though she's putting up pretty good numbers, SMITE players consistently rate her nearly dead last on tier lists and in discussions, and her pick and ban rate is low to match. Community discussion. This has been a strong motivator for the design team on both reworks in 7.1. We can never really hear from everyone out there in the SMITE community, but with the Olympians, an international team of community managers, and a dev team that is always participating in community discussion, we get a pretty good feel for it. Bastet has had constant negative discussions around her kit design. Clear ways to improve. Bastet's kit has a clear issue. It's pretty much only damage. I would say there's more than that, but well. It is not surprising to hear that players are not excited or interested in playing a kit that doesn't do much beyond leaping in, dumping your kit, and then leaping out. As we evaluate our goals in the next section, you'll see how this path could conflict with her core playstyle. Want Bastet to still be able to dive in and kill guards, but there's room to give her more exciting gameplay and more utility without taking away that identity. So what I think is that yes, she has only damage, but beyond that she also has the ultimate that is just lackluster in its current state, because it's her cats, which are effective to some degree in early game depending on who you're fighting against, but in late game just get blown up. But this is tackled. I know we have like a temporary solution to that at the moment, where you get more, well, amplified abilities or a buff for your cats dying, but usually that doesn't work as effectively as it should be because you already used your kit at that point. But we'll get to that. Bastat's history. We're gonna quickly look at this here, just to quickly see what it's about, but we've already seen this with other guards as well. So we have the match count here. Blue always starts up relatively high when a guard just came out. Then had a popularity spike here. I think that was around release. Can't quite tell there. And then, yeah, just very consistent. Relatively, well, lower-ish match count, I would say. Her win rate has stayed pretty consistent as well. And we can see that most of the time it is even over 50% here. So doing pretty well. But it also not crazy over 50%. So not reaching 55 most of the time either. And then the band count, we can see, has been spiking twice. Must have been probably around, maybe around Worlds or something, but then after that, basically almost non-existent. So just the standard explanation here. So the match count has been low with slight fluctuations for almost 4 years. So really not been popular overall. Win rate is quite consistent. Yep, we had that. It's clearly contrast Freya, where her high win rate graph moved up and down drastically. So another reason for the rework, essentially. And she didn't have any significant numbers of bans since 2015, which is because she's not really considered meta. What are the goals for Bastat's rework? Target the points of the rework. Bastat's rework targeted damage skills that had little redeeming quality. Her passive was simply bonus damage, something she does not need more of, so that will be targeted. Her 3 and her 4 felt like the best place to add more to her kit without conflicting with other goals. Preserve core playstyle. Bastet is loved by her players for being a high damage, high aggression, early game jungler. However, we do feel that she does those things to an extreme level that limits her kit from having more features and causes snowbally or frustrating gameplay. We will not be changing her Pounce or Razor Whip as they best fit that playstyle. This combo just felt so iconically Bastet that it could not be changed. It fits her theme and playstyle equally well and feels great to use on the battleground. Bastat's kit will have some damage shifted away for more utility and some of her early game strength shifted to more mid to late game impact, which is very, very interesting. She will continue to summon pets, as we'll discuss next. Preserve core features. Cats. They are loving pets, terrible movies, or fierce wild beasts depending on the context. Bastet is the goddess of them and they're here to stay. Although cats are her unique features, they were also a common complaint among players. In order to remedy this, we set the goal of keeping the cats, but finding more interesting ways to use them instead of relying on their current behaviors. Have clear goals. Preserve the highly aggressive in and out assassin who can also summon pets. Improve her perception versus reality issues and get her balance point to more closely match player evaluation. Add ways for Bastet to make a more meaningful impact on late game teamfights, outside of simply picking off an enemy. Add or feature the cats more often in multiple ways to gameplay. Fix some issues on Bastet that just feel clunky and unintended. And before we get into the rework, I'm going to have a quick drink. So, with all our evaluation, stats and constraints, and goals clearly defined, we can now describe the changes to Bastat's kit. Here Bastat's full kit patch notes summarized. Passive, tracking scent. Complete rework. Bastet will mark enemy guards she damages, causing them to leave a scent trail behind them. this trail will show Bastet where they are moving, while also giving her movement speed while she is inside the path. So I guess this is a tuned down version of Arachne's spiderweb essentially. It doesn't slow the enemy anything, but it speeds up Bastet when she's on that path. Also makes it a bit predictable where she's going to walk, I guess. But what I think is very important here is that so far there is no mention of stealth here. And from what I understand, with everything that goes into it and no mention of it being cleansed by stealth, this tracking should probably follow enemies through stealth. Which would mean we have yet another stealth counter, because she just has to damage you once and she will know where you are going at all times. And she will also be fast chasing you. So that is already very scary, very interesting. I'm guessing the movement speed increase here will be relatively low, will not be too much because it would be a bit OP otherwise. But that is already interesting. Now Bastet is not the character to make the biggest use of movement speed, keep that in mind. Because she can just jump in, use her 2, throw her 3, and all of that doesn't really require her to stick to an enemy. She's not that big on AA cancels. You maybe throw in 1 or 2 when you can, but it's not her main thing. She just relies on the broad damage of her abilities all the time. So her sticking to an enemy is not inherently making her drastically stronger on its own, as often she doesn't even need that. So we'll see how much the passive really changes her, because I think it takes away something from her, which is the extra damage, but at the same time it adds a counter mechanic and adds something more unique, which I think will also look cool. If it looks anything like this design, it's going to be very interesting. So I like this. I also wonder what happens if you damage multiple enemies, if you can track all of them, if you can run quickly into any direction. And it will definitely give her some more chase down potential when her abilities are down. Ability 1, Pounce, unchanged. Ability 2, Razor Whip. This actually gets a change, but not really, and I'm really happy that this change is happening. So unchanged design, may or may not get minor tweaks later. This ability has had its hit area and effects adjusted to be more accurate. Players will see more clear FX indicating the hit area. The hit will more closely match the animation timing, and the hit will only affect enemies in that area at that time. There is some really weird interactions with Razor Whip at the moment, because she essentially swings her whip, but the entire animation is off because it actually is just a point hit. It doesn't work like Shanga's ability, for example. It just hits in one spot, even though the animation is completely different to that. And then it hits in a cone area there. It's very weird if you like turn your camera quickly while using the ability, because technically it feels like you would be able to hit a whole wave by swinging it, but you actually cannot do that. You can do it by standing further away, almost. It's really weird. So I'm very glad that they're reworking that a little bit and make that feel better, and maybe speed up the animation a little bit as well, because right now it's very slow compared to everything else. It lacks clarity. So I'm glad they're doing that as well, along with the rework. Ability 3, Ensnaring Claw. Complete rework. Line targeter. Bastet calls a single cat pet that charges forward. When this pet hits an enemy guard, they are rooted and take damage. They're rooted. I should emphasize that. They're not just slowed, they're rooted. After the pet hits a guard, or when it finishes charging, I'm just gonna, somebody was a bit in a rush while writing this. When it finishes charging its complete distance, it continues to persist on the battleground. So it's still a regular cat at that point, and behaves as a usual Bastet cat. It will attack and slow the nearest enemy and can be killed by enemies. So it still has the slow as well. You have a root and a slow, and the cat dashing forward. I don't know how much damage it does on the dash, or if the initial dash does as much as the old 3. I would guess it does a little bit less damage, and then the cat can do successive hits for more damage overall. And then also, last but not least, cats now are only killed by a specific number of basic attacks instead of having traditional HP. That is huge. Because right now one of the big problems for Bastet is, again, that in late game her cats are just killed by anything and everything. You just need like a big mage AoE and that's it. And, excuse me. And by having this health points instead, which you know, for example, from Calder as well, the cats will effectively survive a lot more, especially against mages, against guardians, against many warriors, many assassins. Only against hunters, not much is going to change. But even if the cats have, say, 3 hit points, compared to what it is now, that wouldn't make much of a difference. A hunter at the moment can kill a cat in 3 basic attacks anyways in late game. So this is just an outright buff to the cats, and obviously a buff to the 3, very likely an outright buff as well, because now she has more CC on the 3, and she gets the cat that adds utility, and, well, gives the enemy something to struggle with, really. And I really don't know how many health points we're going to talk about here. I am kind of guessing the health points might increase with leveling this ability, but anything above 3 seems very scary, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'll just be like 1 point, 2 points, 3 points or something. I don't know. We'll learn more about that, but I think it's scary and interesting. And now we get to ability 4 and gets more scary and more interesting. Ability 4, Guardians of the Bast. Complete rework, self-stim. Bastet summons 2 cat guardians, not normal cats, 1 on each side of her. These mystical beasts empower all of Bastet's abilities for an extended duration. They will attack with her as she uses her abilities, increasing their area of effect and dealing additional damage. The cats summoned to her side cannot be attacked and do not block players, minions, or projectiles, so they're just astral cats, essentially. Ability 1 gains a much larger 3-circle pounce area. So you have these 2 cats pouncing with you, and they cover a huge area, which would be a massive impact in a team fight. Ability 3 gains a wider overlapping 3-cone area. So this is going to be interesting in how it works. I don't know if the angle is just straightforward or if they like slight angle towards each other or something. But again, obviously AoE team fight potential here. What I'm wondering is what happens if you get hit by the overlap. If you get hit by the Bastet 2 and by one of the Guardian Cats 2. Does that mean you take double damage? Does that mean you take 2 instances of damage from each ability? Or does it just, confirm the ability or something? Depending on that, it could be massive even for single target damage. Ability 3 becomes 3 line shots, firing out 3 cats on each use of the ability. Sounds familiar? This is essentially the old ultimate. The bonus damage dealt by the additional areas increases as you rank this ability. These additional cats can still be attacked as described for ability 3. So it sounds like the cat damage from the cat guardians is generally lower. Otherwise there would be no reason to level it to increase the AoE damage. So it's maybe something that you're not looking towards too much in earlier stages, kind of depending on how much the increase is really, but I think you're still looking to primarily do single target damage in early game. But at the same time, you still basically have the old ultimate, only that is kind of part of the 3 now. Of course, you lose the old 3 in a sense for that, and you lose some extra damage amplification from her passive, so your single target damage can be lower. But at the same time, it also depends on how the 3 works. The 3 cats become 3 line shots, but do they go straight forward, like next to each other, or do they align towards the middle shot, in which case you would have additional damage from each cat hitting the person standing in the middle, and then the single target damage would probably be higher as well. And all of these 3 cats that are spawned that still work like normal cats will also have these health points instead of the health bars, from what we understand, which will mean they will survive much longer on average. And I don't know how long this buff lasts, but it says on each use of the ability. It could be that if you use your ultimate and you have, say, max CDR, or maybe even a little bit above that, maybe you have like a Genji's Guard or something, and then you use your 3 right away, that while the Guardians of Bast are still active, you might be able to use the 3 again to spawn 3 more cats, which honestly sounds pretty terrifying to me. So we don't know how exactly all of this will go down, but it definitely sounds scary. I'm guessing the ultimate will have a rather short duration, just more of a jump in, drop your kit, get out, as Bastet works. But if not, if it lasts a little bit longer, this is going to be super scary. And even then, Bastet will still have excellent early game damage. All she really needs for early game damage is her 1 and 2, because the damage between those abilities is very, very high. And the 3 now actually adds a little bit more through the root, through the basic attack, that you can maybe apply an extra basic attack by getting close enough when the enemy is rooted, through the extra damage that the cat itself can deal. And you also have more chase potential because you mark enemies, maybe giving you some time for more basic attacks. So her early game kill potential, in my opinion, from what it sounds like right now, unless we see very major number tweaks, will be very unaffected, even though she loses some passive effects and whatnot. On the other hand, her late game potential will massively increase due to her ultimate, slightly depending on how much extra damage the ultimate really provides per cat, per guardian. But I think this is huge overall, and I think this is very interesting. I honestly, from what I've seen so far, I'm expecting Bastet to get nerfs just like one patch down. But I want to see it. I want to see how this goes down, because I think this looks very interesting. And honestly, Bastet has been a very boring god for a long time. Very boring goddess. So I'm okay with her being changed up, even though I don't really play her that much. I want to see what happens to her. Expected effects. Bastet is seeing some big changes, with 3 abilities being completely reworked. The preservation, which is actually, by the way, it's funny because they kind of said like, oh, we're reworking like 1 or 2 abilities now, and they actually threw in the passive as well, like, why not? The preservation of her cat pets will make that feel less intense than it sounds, though, as Bastet players will be used to using that type of effects. I think that too, by the way. I think that Bastet mains are not really going to feel worse in any regard here, because they really keep pretty much everything that made Bastet. I don't think, throwing out that slowing razor whip really is going to feel that impactful. It's going to be interesting how the new 3 works to clear, but it sounds like it only stops on guards, so it should work more effectively for clear, actually. Also, Bastet will still be able to pounce in and out on players, hitting them with Razor Whip. On that note, quick thought. If her 3 now goes through minions, it might actually be that she has a much better presence in lanes now, that she might be a better soul lane or ADC or something as well, because she might be able to clear much better with her 3, and then you have that cat running after enemies afterwards. Having better CC and a pet on normal ability cooldown will give Bastet a lot more options when jungling, ganking, setting up, or cleaning up fights. Ensnaring Claw can be dropped into a combo or fired before pouncing to confirm hits or bait out enemy movement abilities. To be honest, I think confirming Bastet's abilities is not a problem most of the time. She will be doing less damage all of the time without her old passive triggers. Well, less direct damage, that's the point. She has more CC though and more chase potential, so will she really be doing less damage? But her ultimate will be what makes up for that. Summoning the Guardians of Bast will be Bastet's key damage amplification. The added area from the ability, as well as gaining a root in her kit, are the key changes that will let her contribute to late game teamfights. That root could even root 3 different targets when combined with her ultimate, which makes it sound like the line abilities are maybe more straight, or like at least just slightly angled, so that you can root different targets with that. This set of changes should make Bastet clearly feel more impactful and more consistent, and rely less on hyper carrying the early game. Bastet is performing pretty well, so we hope to keep her balance point at consistent level, but with more people excited to try her out. Cats are amazing creatures, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be popular in SMITE. They left out the part where they say the patch notes are on the 8th, so I can just say that again. And I think I've said everything I want to say about Bastet at this point. We have to see how exactly it works out with the patch notes, how the numbers are changed. But I am very, very excited for this one. And generally, got to say that a lot of things for Season 7 look quite promising. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to the channel and you want to stay updated for what comes tomorrow, which is, I think, the Joust update as well, feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell so that you get that notification. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.